So welcome everyone. Thank you, Toni, very much. I know how busy you are. You've been traveling a lot because of your book. So I really, really appreciate it. 100 lawyers and translators have enrolled for the talk, so I'm very excited, and I bet they're excited too. Most of them I know won't have time to watch us or to participate live, but everyone will get the recording later. So I'll start by introducing Toni, and then she'll talk a little bit about herself, and then of course about her book. So I said she's very busy, and she has done a lot of things in her life. So I want to share what she has done. So Toni Fine is an assistant dean of international and no JD programs at Fordham Law School. By the way, just interrupting a little bit here. I met Toni last year at Fordham at the Summer Institute. So if you lawyers want to get to know a little bit more about the Summer Institute, talk to me, and then I'll talk to Toni. But it's basically a 3-week long course taught by American law professors, and they teach us about American law. It's amazing, whatever. So I was very happy to be there. So going on here, Toni has taught or lectured domestically and in Argentina, Brazil, China, Colombia, Croatia, Czech Republic, Dominican Republic, Egypt, Germany, Italy, Japan, Hungary, Kazakhstan, Mexico, the Netherlands, Nigeria, Peru, Romania, Spain, Switzerland, Taiwan, and Vietnam. I told you guys that she travels a lot. So Toni Jaeger-Fine is the author of numerous articles on a wide range of topics published in the US and abroad, as well as several books. Becoming a Lawyer, Discovering and Defining Your Professional Persona, which she will be talking about tonight. American Legal Systems, a resource and reference guide. Another book, An Introduction to the Anglo-American Legal System, which has been translated into Italian, Korean, and Portuguese. The US LLM, From Whether to When, What, Where, and How. And Mastering the US Legal System, all of the books she has written. Toni Jaeger-Fine blogs online at yourprofessionalpersona.com. I follow her blog, and her articles are really interesting. She's a regular speaker to delegations hosted by the US Department of State, senior counselor to the international section of the Federal Bar Association, and an application reader for the Schwarzman Scholars Program. Previously, Toni Jaeger-Fine served as Associate Director of the Global Law Program at the NYU School of Law. She was twice a Fulbright Senior Specialist Program grant recipient and is past chair of the sections on postgraduate legal education, international legal exchange, and legal education for foreign lawyers of the Association of American Law Schools. Toni Jaeger-Fine was associated with the law firm of Crowell and Morin in Washington, D.C., where her practice focused on commercial appellate and administrative litigation. So she's a law professor, and she is a lawyer too with experience. And she's a cum laude graduate of Duke Law School and received her BA from Harper College, where she was elected to Phi Beta Kappa. I hope my pronunciation is not that bad. So Toni, thank you very much again. I really appreciate your time and your availability to be here with us tonight. Feel free to talk as much as you want about your new book, and I hope everyone enjoys the talk. And please, everyone, during the talk, feel free to ask questions on the chat, but let's Toni finish, and then I'll ask her your questions, okay? Go ahead, Toni.
Perfect. Muito obrigada, Bruna, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, and I'm not used to speaking online like this, but I think I've got it figured out. I'm so grateful to all of you for showing up, and I know that others will be listening to the recording. And I hope to hear from you. At the end, I will take questions, as Bruna said. I'm so impressed with all the work that Bruna does, bringing US law and US legal English to those of you in Brazil. Brazil is such an important country. English is a pretty important language in law. And so I'm so happy to help Bruna in her work to bridge the gap. I'm going to share my screen now, assuming I can figure out how. Let me just, so far so good.
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Great, I'm so happy. And what you'll see here is the name of my book, my name, and my email address. And I would encourage you to please reach out to me later if you have questions about the book, about programs here at Fordham Law School, about anything else, and I'll do my very best to help you with that. I'm a little slower in responding to emails these days than I usually am, but I will always do my best. So the name of the book, as you see, is Becoming a Lawyer. But then the really important part of it is discovering and defining your professional persona. And a lot of people say to me, what does this thing mean? What is this professional persona? And so I've come up with kind of a working definition that I hope will give you an idea of what I'm trying to get at with the professional persona. I think of professional persona as a set of attitudes and behaviors that come to define each of us as professionals. And this is beyond technical skills, beyond substantive knowledge, and it is, in my view, these attitudes and behaviors that ultimately determine your success. So before I talk about what these attitudes and behaviors are, I want to speak a little bit about some preliminary concepts related to the professional persona, which I think are really, really important. The first is that this is a really valuable asset. I never would have spent 2 years writing this book if I didn't think it was really, really important. And I think a lot of us, attorneys and other people as well, tend to underinvest in self-reflection and self-improvement and many of these softer skills that are really important part of the legal practice. And what I encourage each of you to do, and the fact, honestly, that you're logged on this evening or will log in later, have signed up for this seminar, tells me that you understand the value of this professional persona. So please do treat it like a valuable asset. It's also a controllable asset. It is one of the relatively few things over which each of us has complete control. And this is, in my view, really empowering because there are so many things in our lives. And I didn't get to see you, so I don't know how old you are, but my guess is there's a lot of you who are maybe law students, maybe young lawyers, maybe mid-level associates. But the truth is, no matter what stage we are in our career, we have a lot of bosses, we have clients, we have family obligations. There are a lot of things that seem out of our control. I know I feel that way a lot. The development and nurturing of our professional persona is one of the relatively few things over which each of us has complete control. So take control, take charge, and you will reap the benefits of this if you decide not to nurture and develop and control your professional persona. You really have no one else to blame. This is an area in which we have complete control. Your professional persona is also contextual in that it will change depending on the circumstance. So if you are together with a group of colleagues at your own level, you might embrace one way of behaving, one set of attitudes. But if you're with partners at your law firm or the chairman of the company for which you work, or with some client or prospective client, or with judges, your professional persona may be different. What's important is that each of us take account of the context we are in at any particular time and behave accordingly. Fourth, your professional persona changes over time. And one of the things I like to tell people when I talk about my book, and this is entirely true, is that when I sat down to begin this project, I thought, this is going to be very easy for me. I have a very clear understanding of what the legal professional persona is, and it's going to be very easy for me to tell everybody else how to become that person. The truth is, as I sat down to write the book, I realized how difficult it was, how multidimensional this concept is, and most importantly, how much learning I myself still had to do, even pretty late in my career, that there were so many things I still had to learn, so many things I did well, but much more importantly, so many things that I still needed to learn, to focus on, to develop. And so when we talk about becoming a lawyer, the title, I don't necessarily mean, oh, you finish your law school, you get qualified to be a member of the bar, you register with the OAB, you get a job and you become a lawyer. What I mean is the way in which we become a lawyer over and over and over again, every day, over the duration of our careers. And also the kind of professional, the kind of person that we are over the course of our lifetimes. And so what my hope is that each of you takes something away today that resonates with you, that you can use in building and developing your professional persona, not just today, not just tomorrow, not just next week, but over the course of your career and the course of your lifetime. And the final sort of introductory comment I want to make is that your professional persona will be unique to you. Why? Because it is linked and must be linked intimately to who you are as a person. So your personal persona is a starting point for developing your professional persona. If you try to develop a professional persona that is not linked intimately to who you are as a person, it will be unsustainable, it will be inauthentic, and ultimately it will fail. So with these preliminary ideas in mind, the book is divided into three main elements: foundations, self-management, professionalism from the inside, and relationships, professionalism with the outside. So let me start, of course, with foundations. And the four foundations that I want to talk about are: first, unconscious incompetence. And this is basically a way of explaining how we move from levels of incompetence, unconscious incompetence, where we're not even aware of how incompetent we are, to conscious competence, where we become aware of our shortcomings, we become aware of our incompetence, to levels of competence. First, conscious competence. Conscious competence is a stage in which we have become somewhat competent at something, but we still have to focus. We still have to exert a lot of energy, a lot of attention in getting the job done, as opposed to the final stage, the stage of unconscious competence, where we have achieved such mastery over a task that we could do it almost automatically. And this gets into the next foundation, which is habit. But let me just talk about how we move from stages of incompetence to stages of competence. How do we do that? We do that first by questioning. Are we good at something, or can we actually improve? Is this actually a skill worth knowing? Is it something that may be harder than we think about? Deep, sustained, thoughtful, methodical questioning, followed by reflection. The same deep, sustained, meaningful reflection. Reflection before we take an action, while we take an action, which is known as reflection in action, and finally reflection after we take an action. And the thing about lawyers, and let me say that most of my research was based on US lawyers, but as Bruna said, I work with international lawyers all the time. And so there might be some cultural differences here, and you would be better able to identify them than I am. But I think that lawyers as a group tend to underinvest in self-reflection. And we do that maybe in part because that's our personalities, but I think we also do it because of the very practical reality that we're really busy. And so we don't always take the time to reflect before, during, and after taking an action, because we're always under so much pressure to move on to the next thing. I would urge you to try to take a moment to reflect when you can. And again, deep, meaningful, sustained reflection. The third tool that we can use to move from stages of incompetence to stages of competence is observation and imitation. And this is really, really important. I read a lot of social science as I was writing this book, and it turns out that we learn so much by observing others and by imitating those that we admire and by not imitating those who we do not admire. This is a really, really important tool. And so one of the things I was with a group of students this morning talking about networking, right? It's not really what we're focused on now, but networking. And they said, I don't know how to do it. He said, just go and observe. Go to an event. Observe lawyers that look like they know how to network. How are they approaching people? How are they beginning conversations? How are they exchanging cards? Observe people you admire. You will learn so much. And what we should do is not just observe a single person, because if you try to be a single person that you admire, let's say there's a partner at your law firm that you really, really admire, it's probably not going to work for the reasons that we talked about earlier, to just become her. But instead, you might say, gee, this particular partner is very, very good at giving presentations. I see how comfortable she is, how she can really grab an audience. This is something that I really want to understand better. I want to observe her. I want to think about how she does this. And if I don't really understand what's behind it, I'm going to ask her. I'm going to say, gee, I noticed you're a really exceptionally great presenter. Can you tell me how you practiced, how you became so comfortable? Maybe there's someone else, another partner you admire, and you see that he is an incredibly creative problem solver. Try to figure out, how does he become so creative? Is it part of his natural curiosity? How can I become more curious and more creative like him? And you can ask him if you have any doubts. The final tool that we can use is to be coachable. Be coachable. What does this mean? It means that we should incorporate feedback that people give us. It doesn't mean that you have to accept and really live by every piece of feedback that you get from everybody. But what it does mean is that you should at least incorporate feedback to the point of thinking about what the person said, questioning whether it is meaningful and useful feedback, deciding when and how and if and to the extent to which you can meaningfully incorporate that feedback into your everyday life. Don't be that person who every time you give them a piece of advice, they just say, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. We know those people. Those people are not coachable. Those people are not really looking for advice. They're looking to complain. Don't be that person. When somebody gives you advice, listen to it and try to incorporate it. The next is habit. Habits are things we do automatically, things that excuse me, have a genuine pattern of regularity, and habits are so important. It turns out that 50 to 60% of what we do on a daily basis is based on habit. And the great thing about habits is they allow us to do things with much less time and energy than other things. Things that we do habitually, we do them easily, and we do them quickly, and we do them without using a lot of mental energy. That saves us time for other things, more bespoke problems, difficult situations. They allow us to deal with those much better, stressful situations. And here's the great thing about good habits. When you develop good habits, there are studies that show that those good habits will lead to other good habits. There are these studies of people who start exercising. They never exercised before they start exercising. They also start eating better. They start drinking less alcohol. They start smoking less. They start using their credit cards less, and they start to be more productive at work. Scientists have not yet fully figured that out, how that happens, but one habit leads to another. And when you think of bad habits, you realize this right away. So let's say I come down to Brazil, and I usually try to watch what I eat. I'm careful about what I eat, but I'm in Brazil. So for breakfast, I wake up and I have that great cheese you have, that grilled cheese, yeah, I can't see you, so I have no idea if you understand me. And I have some pão de queijo, and I have, a lot of really strong coffee. And then by lunchtime, I say, well, I've been eating badly all day, so I might as well have some pasta. I might as well eat this and that. You go down this slippery slope. The reverse is also true, though. Once you begin to develop good habits, those good habits lead to other good habits. The book talks a little bit about how to develop good habits, but what I want you to do is this. Think about a habit that you want to develop now, or a bad habit that you want to change. There's ways to do that. Do it now. Why? It never gets easier. It is true that habits are best developed, easiest to develop at a younger age. So for those of you who are young, this is the time. Your brain still has the requisite malleability to develop good habits. But it's never too late. And there's a great expression, I believe it comes from an old Chinese philosopher, and it goes something like this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So find a habit. Maybe you're on Facebook or Instagram too often. Try to flip that habit to something more productive, like using LinkedIn more, or going out to network more, or writing a blog or something. And the book gives you some tips for how to do that, but do it now. The third foundation is intelligence. And one of the great discoveries of the 20th century, one of the great discoveries for me as I was writing this book, is that your intelligence quotient, your IQ, is just not as important as we used to think it was. When I was a child, at least in the US, everybody had their IQ tested, and everyone believed that this was going to determine your success or lack thereof. What we know now is the following. You need a certain amount of intelligence to be a lawyer, to be a translator, to be a professional in many, many different fields. But beyond what you need to be a lawyer, for example, the differentials in our IQs above that amount are irrelevant. What is really, really important, social intelligence and emotional intelligence. Understanding and responding to your own emotions, and understanding and reacting to the emotions of others. These are the real differentiators. And these are things, unlike IQ, that we can develop over time. So forget about your IQ. It's static, it is what it is, and it's enough. The real differentiators for success are in social and emotional intelligence. And the final foundation is leadership. And I like to talk about the concept of leadership for all. The notion that leadership is not about a position, it's not about a title, it's not about how high up in the organization you are or how old you are. It is about a mindset. It's about an orientation. Why? Because what a leader is first and foremost a visionary. A leader is someone who is goal-oriented. Second, a leader is someone who can move herself and others towards those goals. She's a change agent. And so leaders have goals and know how to get those goals fulfilled. And leaders do that through many of the same personal and interpersonal skills that we talked about with respect to social and emotional intelligence. And so if you think of someone in your firm, in your company, in your court, wherever you're working, in your government organization, and you view that person as that person is, let's say, the managing partner of the law firm, I can guarantee you that person did not wake up one day and say, oh, look at this. I'm a partner. I'm the managing partner. I better figure out how to be a leader. No. That person became the managing partner of the firm, or the CEO of the company, or the general counsel, or the chief judge, or whatever, because all his life he has had the mindset and the orientation of a true leader. The second part of the book is about self-management. And here I talk about mindset and dispositions, time management and organization, and well-being. When I think about a mindset and disposition, I first think about someone who has a positive mindset. Mindset based on growth. I can be better. I can learn, as opposed to a fixed mindset, which is, I'm just really bad at technology. I can never learn anything. I'm horrible. I'm not even going to try. Always embrace growth. If you adopt a fixed mindset, you can never be better because you've already decided that you cannot learn something. You cannot be better at something. Be an optimist rather than a pessimist, both backwards looking and forwards looking. So a pessimist says, my life has been a disaster. I've had all these failures. Nothing will get better. My life is just horrible. An optimist says, I have had struggles in my life. I've had challenges. I've even had failures. But you know what? I'm still here. And I'm still going to be able to improve and get better over time. I know I can do this. And this is very closely connected with something called resiliency and grit. Resilience is falling down and getting up stronger and better and faster. Grit is having the patience for sustained persistence over time, to get up every day and get the job done day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. A positive mindset is about being enthusiastic and passionate about what you do. Is everything and every day of our lives exciting? No. But when you feel bored, when you feel depressed, when you feel like you're not moving forward, first of all, you may have to think of an exit strategy. You may have to think of something different. But while you're there, take a step back and say, okay, I'm doing this particular project for 3 weeks. It's really, really boring. But wow, it's part of a much bigger deal. And that deal is really exciting. And I'm working at this great law firm or this great company. And I'm doing something that is so special. I am so privileged to have this position, to be able to do this, to be able to make a difference, not only in the lives of clients, but in the lives of my community, my society. Mindset and dispositions is about a commitment to excellence, not just being good enough, but being excellent in everything you do. It's about being resourceful, being dedicated and diligent, having self-discipline and willpower, being reliable and prepared, but also being adaptable and flexible. It's about not only paying attention to details, but embracing and taking pride in the craftsmanship of a document that looks really good, that doesn't have typographical mistakes, that has internal consistency, that looks nice. About being creative. Creative lawyering is the best lawyering. And about being wise. It's also about character. Being a person who expresses gratitude when somebody does you a good turn. To be dignified. To be discreet. Not only with confidential information, which goes without saying, but with information that is sensitive, that someone entrusted you with. It's about being humble. And the essence of humility is realizing that you can learn things from anyone, not just from your superiors, not even just from people at your own level, but the most unexpected sources. A junior person, a paralegal, a secretary, a person who serves you coffee on your way to work, a person who is working at the store where you go to buy a suit, anyone, to always realize that you're not the best, that you don't have all the answers, and that you could learn from anyone. But at the same time, to be confident in what you do, to be a person of integrity, to have a sense of humor, not a vicious sense of humor, but that you could laugh at situations, that you could laugh at yourself, and that you can be elegant, graciousness, even when it's not required, is a great attribute. Time management and organization. And there's a lot to say about all of these things. I'm just going to say a couple of things. First, being on time, and I know this is a cultural issue, being on time and being timely with assignments is about expectations and it's about respect. And so I want to urge all of you to do something that you've probably never done, to do a time budget. Audit your time, think about how you spend your time, and think about how you want to spend your time. And here's the interesting thing. When we talk about money, I think most of us have some general sense of our financial budget, what our fixed expenses are every month, what our income is every month. Maybe we want to put aside a certain amount of money every month for something that we want to buy or plan a trip or a wedding or something. And then you have a certain amount of money that's left over that you can enjoy by buying things or doing things with friends and family. But I'm not sure that most of us do that when it comes to time. I think that most of us allow time to manage us without us managing time. So I want to urge you to do a time budget. Why? Time at the end of the day is far more valuable than money. You can always earn more money. Okay, I work at a university. Of course I can make more money, but time is what it is. And each of us has this gift of 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. That's it. And so I read something that was really shocking to me. And I don't know if you all know who Ruth Ginsburg is. She's a real leader in civil rights in the US. She happens to be on our Supreme Court now, has been on for 20 years or so. And the article said, each of us has as much time as Ruth Ginsburg. How do you spend your time? And instead of Ruth Ginsburg, you could fill anyone in there that you admire and respect. You look at their life's work. What have they done? Wow, they've done a lot. They're spending their time in special ways. Think about how you'd spend your time and how you want to spend your time. While we're on time, let's talk about well-being because they are connected. And so just because you spend a couple of hours a day going to the gym or being with friends or being with family doesn't mean you're not spending that time well. It's actually a very important part of well-being, that you spend time, that you understand how your time is spent, and that you spend your time in the way that makes the most sense for you. What does well-being mean? First of all, it's multidimensional. It is not just about physical wellness. It is about physical wellness, but it's also about mental and emotional health. It's about personal satisfaction and growth and enrichment at work. It's about pursuing creative or intellectual challenging activities. It's about a sense of spirituality, which could be religious, but does not have to be. It can some sense of purpose and meaningfulness in life. And it's about the social need that we all have to be connected to others, whether it's a life partner, whether it's friends, whether it's family, and it matters. It matters because as far as we know, we only have this one life. And so there is the personal, the family, the community case for well-being. But it also matters because of your work. So for those of you who need a business excuse, here it is. Lawyers who are not well are not competent. Lawyers who are not well do a terrible job. They make mistakes. They screw up. Don't be one of those lawyers. Be one of those lawyers who has balance. Watch out for yourselves. Do you see a change in your use of alcohol? Do you see a change in your use of drugs? Do you see a change in your sleep patterns? Do you see a change in that you feel depressed, that you feel unhinged, that you feel very anxious? Watch out for yourself and get help if you need it. Watch out for your friends. Watch out for your colleagues. It is acceptable today and it is recommended. And you would know based on the particular environment in which you work, if you could go up to a colleague and say, You don't seem yourself. You've been late a lot. Are you drinking too much? Are you sleeping? Are you struggling in some way? Get help. I hope that the case is, as it is in New York, in the United States, excuse me, that now there are many, many confidential support networks that we could tap into. I hope that is also the case in Brazil. It is also the case in the US, and this is fairly recent, that people are talking about these things. It is no longer a stigma. It is no longer a shameful thing. It is part of the reality that most of us deal with at some point or points in our lives. And I hope that you have people that you could talk to. And if not, be a part of a movement to make that something that law firms and companies and other organizations are focused on. It's important not just for yourselves, it is important for the profession and for the companies for which we work. We're now on to relationships, professionalism with the outside. And here I think first about working with others, learning how to collaborate. Legal education, law school, is pretty much about individuals working on their own. You do your reading, you go to classes, you do your exams, you do well or you don't do well, and then you are thrown into an environment where you have to work with others. Learn how to collaborate, learn how to listen, learn how to respect the decisions of others, in particular those who are different from you. And so one of the things we see in the United States, and my guess is that many of you work with large US companies, or that this is also something that you're seeing in Brazil, a movement by clients towards more diversity. They're saying, we do not want to work with these firms in which the partners are all the same. They're these white American middle-aged men. What the clients are saying is, we want more diversity in the partnership ranks. And we want it not just because it's the right thing, which it is, but because we realize that the more diversity you have among a group of people trying to reach creative solutions, the more difference of opinion you will get, the more diverse the experiences, the more creative the problem-solving process will be, and the better the result. We have to work with people of different age groups. We now have 5 generations in the workforce. We have to learn to appreciate the differences, to embrace the differences, and to take the best from each generation. And to do that, we have to listen. We have to speak to each other, and we have to listen. We have to understand the service orientation of our business. We are lawyers. We do not provide a service that is a means, that is an end unto itself. It is a means to an end. People don't go to lawyers because they want lawyers. People come to lawyers because we are going to help them get out of a problem or help them reach a business or personal goal. We are service providers. Always treat the client with that service orientation in mind. Learn how to be supervised gracefully and graciously, and learn how to supervise effectively in a way that advances institutional objectives, but makes the best of every single member of that team. Learn how to effectively communicate. Write clearly, speak clearly, communicate with purpose, communicate in a way that takes account of the particular audience that you have, that always takes into account the objective or objectives you want to reach. Watch your body language and learn how to read the body language of others. And finally, listen with intentionality. It turns out that we don't listen as well as we think we do. We hear only about 60% of what is said to us, and we forget half of that within a day. Think of how much you can learn and how much you can retain and how much knowledge you will have compared with others if you listen with intentionality. Finally, take care with your public professional persona. you carry not only your own personal brand, your own professional persona, but that of your company or your law firm or your organization, and that of the profession as a whole. Be careful. Be careful. Don't do stupid things. Do you remember Michael Phelps, the American swimmer, who came home from the last Olympics with a chest full of gold medals? And then 2 months later, a picture of him smoking marijuana was all over the tabloids. Don't do stupid things, ever, but especially around people you don't know and trust. Guard your reputation. At the same time, get out there and network. Build a network of professionals who share interests with you. Get out there and meet people. Brand yourself. Not only should you network, but you should be speaking at the bar association, at law schools, at any sort of events at which you could share your knowledge. Write about things that are of interest to you. Use networking tools like LinkedIn to your benefit, but always, always protect your own dignity and the dignity of the profession. And the book gives you a lot of pointers on how to do any of these things effectively. I want to leave by saying thank you again, to remind you of my email address, the name of the book, and my blog. And I also want to tell you, as Bruna did at the start, to tell you a little bit about some of the programs that Fordham Law School offers for people like you. There is, as Bruna mentioned, the Summer Institute. It's our summer, so it's in July, 3 weeks in July. There's a Winter Institute, which is an introduction to the US legal system, which is about 10 days in January. It's very, very cold then for most of you. You will find it pretty cold. But what you will be able to do in that program is to sit side by side with incoming master students to see what their experience is like. We have a semester-long program. It's about 4.5 months from August until December, and again from January until April, called the Legal English Institute. And you study law with a very particular focus on your legal English. And finally, of course, there is the Master of Laws, the LLM. Again, those programs start in January or in August. We offer the LLM in 8 different areas of specialization. And if any of you has any questions about any of these programs, I would be very happy to hear from you. Or of course, you could certainly check our website. So I'm going to close the PowerPoint now.
Thank you.
And I really don't know so much about how to use, I see a chat button. Should I hit the chat button, Bruna?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And I'm going to read. Well, Juliana just said, great talk. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And Fernanda just said, wow, I'm so focused and entertained. She's a great speaker. So
Obrigada, Fernanda.
So, yes, please do check out Fordham programs. If you have any questions, you can write to me or you can write to Toni. And then, of course, if you write to me, I'll let Toni know. I can assure that the Summer Institute is amazing. We were 65 lawyers from 15 countries speaking, I don't know, 10 languages, and it was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot also. Roger said, oh, Roger, he was with us, Toni, last year. So nice to hear from you again, Professor. Thanks.
Roger. Hey,
And,
Roger, that's so awesome.
And Ivy Siqueira, very inspiring lecture. It is indeed.
Thank you, Ivy Siqueira. I'm glad to hear that, because it's a little weird to look at a screen, but know there's real people behind it. So I'm glad it was okay.
Oh, yeah, you know, I've been teaching for like 15, 18 years, and I always get to see my students' face. And then when I started doing webinars, I was like, do people like it? Are people still interested?
It's true. You have no sense of the feedback, and it's just very weird. So
Exactly.
I'm glad you liked it. I also hope that we'll all have a chance to meet in person sometime. next time I'm in Brazil, Bruna, maybe we organize a live lecture, which will
Oh,
be
cool. It would be amazing.
interesting.
It would be amazing. So, I think Tony's book is not available in paper in Brazil, but you can buy it from Amazon to your Kindle, right?
Exactly. I didn't know. I thought they were shipping books to Brazil now, but they might not be. But I can look into that actually.
Okay.
Look into.
But anyway, I'll send
Definitely
you
on Kindle.
the link to the book on Amazon so you guys can buy it easily because, you know, from what we have heard here, it is a great book. Toni, I have taken a lot of notes, but I'd like to ask you two questions. And if you guys have questions, just let me know here at the chat box. You have been traveling a lot and talking about your book and, you know, lawyers from a lot of different countries. Do you think our profession is going the same way in different countries? I mean, the same difficulties that lawyers have in the States, they have in Argentina and in Brazil and in South Korea? Or do you think there are some cultural differences there that are very important to our careers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for sure there are cultural differences. So for example, when I talk about being proactive, which is something that is part of being supervised graciously and gracefully, is that lawyers want, partners want more junior lawyers to be proactive. But then again, if I say that in an audience, let's say in Japan, I think the answer might be a little bit different. So I think that I'm really glad you raised that, Bruna, and it's, I think, part of the context that you always have to think about where you are, not only where you are in terms of, are you with colleagues, are you with bosses, are you with clients, but what is the particular setting, and even more specifically, what is this particular person like? So there might be a partner who just does not like juniors being proactive, and these are things you find out over time. But there definitely are cultural differences. I wish I could tell you what they all were, but I'm not, although I've traveled a lot, I've never really lived in other places. And that's just a really important feature that each of you has to sort of always take into account, is context, including culture. But having said that, I would say that a lot of the book, things like mindset and the commitment to excellence and the importance of habit, are things that transcend all these differences and also transcend time. If someone had given me this book when I was a law student, I think I would have found it very illuminating back then. So I think a lot of these are here, sort of features that are here to stay. But yeah, you always want to take account of context, and that includes the culture. I'm really glad you raised that, Bruna.
Excellent. And it links my idea to the next question, which is, so we Brazilian lawyers, it's very important. Something's very important because usually my students and my company's students, they're very focused on, Bruna, I need to say it right. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? How do I start an email, etc.? Okay, I mean, take care, like focus on your language and right, your legal language and stuff, of course, in English in this case. But also, for example, we Brazilians are very informal. And I mean, if we call a professor, a law professor, and if we say Toni or something, it might, I mean, you wouldn't feel offended, I think, because you know us Brazilians, but like, be careful, right? How to address people in English, and in the States, in England, how do they do it? Think about it.
That's another great question. I mean, you call your president by the first name, right? So
yeah.
Everybody's first name in Brazil. And so one of the things I talk about in the book quite a bit, and again, I realize that it's different for Brazilians, is to err on the side of formality. And you could never be blamed. Look, I want everybody to call me Toni, absolutely, but you could never be blamed for calling me Toni Jaeger-Fine. And so I would always err on the side of formality, especially with a culture with which you're not so familiar. because some cultures, even within Latin America, some cultures are significantly more formal than yours. And I think of like Argentina, you're so close, and yet Argentines tend to be very formal. Mexicans, I actually thought they were a little more formal than my impression was last week. I was there last week and they didn't seem so formal. But I think especially if you're young, especially if you're not in a position of sort of equal power with them, you can never be faulted for being a little bit more formal.
Exactly. And to wrap up, again, my students, they usually speak intermediate general English, but they complain that they're like, Bruna, I'm here reading a legal text and I do not understand a word. It doesn't make sense to me. And then I always tell them, listen, legal English is a language inside a language. So like if you're Brazilian, but you don't have a law degree, and if you go and talk to a lawyer, you might not understand all the words, all the concepts, all the jargons, right? So you at Fordham, you have a lot of students from many countries every year, etc. What's a tip you could give Brazilian students in terms of legal language?
That's really tricky. And if it makes some of you feel better, I'll tell you that when I started law school in the US as a native English speaker, I didn't understand anything. And
oh, really? It does make us feel better.
And Bruna, I'm telling you, after the first week, I came home and I sat on the floor in like a catatonic state because it was so exhausting. So I feel your pain. And of course, for you, it's that much more difficult because it's a language inside the language, and then you're not even a native language speaker. So I would say, first of all, don't think that makes you stupid or slow or anything. Really, I did not understand anything in my first week of school. So I think my advice would be, short of coming to the US and spending some time here, is to spend a little time every day. And what I try to do for things that are important to me is put aside just 10 or 15 minutes a day. Whether it's meditating or exercise or writing. I like to write every day for 10 minutes, just stream of consciousness. Take 15 minutes a day and read judicial opinions, in US judicial opinions or UK judicial opinions, if that's what interests you, but I think the US is much more interesting. And even if you don't understand everything, and even if it takes you 2 weeks to read one case, just go very, very slowly and try to get familiar with the language and the way in which they present the language. And then maybe look up a summary of that case before, so you have some idea what's going on, but read the actual judicial opinions, because judicial opinions learning how to read judicial opinions is really at the heart of being able to practice US law or really understand it. But even if you're not interested in that, read contracts in English, just read something in English, some primary source in English. Much better than reading law professors' books in English, which I know is very against my own interest because I would love you to read my book. But I really think it's important to read primary material in English and be very, very patient with yourself because it's really, really difficult.
That is a great tip.
Bruna, I see we got a question.
Yes, from Juliana.
So I can't, it's cut off a little bit on my screen.
Should I read the question?
I'm not a lawyer, I'm a translator. Would like to know your opinion about the relation between a lawyer and a translator working together. So thanks, Juliana. Obrigada. That's a great question. I have to say that when I work with translators and interpreters, I'm incredibly impressed because it seems to me that they just sort of perform magic. I'm not sure I understand exactly the question. I can tell you that I once worked with translators in the US. I was doing document review as part of a litigation, and it was for a multinational company. And a lot of the documents were in different languages. So we had translators and we basically sat side by side and they told me what the document was about. And those that were, I thought, relevant, I would ask them to translate. I've also worked with interpreters in lectures and also in courts. So a lot of what happens here, a really great job for interpreters here, I think, are in court. If you could become a court certified interpreter, which I know is not a translator, but it might be that you're training for both, and work in courts, because there are so many matters that come up in the US courts, especially in a city like New York, where either some of the documents are in a foreign language, or one of the parties or a witness is not comfortable speaking in English. But I think that there are also a lot of positions for translators in law firms, working with documents that are in different languages. So I think there's a lot of areas in which we could work together. Does that help at all?
Yeah, sure. Especially like in Brazil, we have our car wash operation, and then we're looking at the US law, right, to bring some solutions. So a lot of interpreters are coming to Brazil because a lot of American lawyers are coming. So they need to understand their clients, of course. And what do we do? I think we've talked about it, Toni, is at Descomplicando, Inglês, Jurídico, or Uncomplicating Legal English, my company. We teach students, lawyers and translators, a little bit about our legal system. Of course, lawyers know, but we teach translators a little bit about our Brazilian legal system, and we teach them your legal system. And then we start talking about language, because it's not only like medicine, you know, I is I and heart is heart everywhere. So that's what we look at. And that's really important, so for people to understand each other. So Toni, thank you very much again. I know you're very busy and you have a lot going on. And thank you for your time and for, you know, your availability to talk to us.
Never too busy for you, Bruna. So thank you so much, and thank you all. And I hope we'll all have a chance to meet in person at some point.
Yeah, sure. I would love to bring you to Brazil to teach a course or something. I'm going to talk to these people and see what they think, to lawyers.
Fantastic.
Maybe they have good ideas, right? Caroline, fantastic presentation. Thanks a lot, Toni and Bruna. Loved it. So.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Carolina.
And for those of you who are watching our recording, thank you again, because I know your lives are hectic. So I hope you enjoyed the recording. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thanks for the nice comments.
Bye-bye. Boa noite.